Good morning, everyone, and another happy new year to you all. Thank you for being in the chat. This is The Early Edge, brought to you by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas. We have a great show for you today, but before we talk about our picks for a Thursday, let's take a look at how we did yesterday, courtesy of the recap screen. It looks like we went 2-2. My golf play is pending. Harry Hall minus 140 over Nick Taylor. I did say if you wanted to throw a 3-ball in, Harry Hall over Taylor and Vegas is a potential play at plus money. That golf tournament has not tipped off yet. We still got a couple of hours there. Tom Casale, good stuff with Travion Henderson, and Prop Stars goes 1 for 2. We missed the SportsLine pick. 2 for 2 or 2 for 4 isn't bad, but we got to do better, right? We got to do better than 2 wins, 2 losses. We're going to do it with the stars of the show, ladies and gentlemen. That includes you, of course, in all your picks, but it also includes Mackenzie Brooks. It includes Larry Hartstein. It includes Buckets. Buckets, I gotta ask you. Yeah. The jacket is 1-0. How you feeling after that Ohio State? It wasn't just a win. I mean, it was a demolition.
It was a demolition. I feel good. Of course, I didn't bet it because I don't know how to bet college football myself. But as a resident of Columbus, it's fun just to go to a bar, watch the game, and kind of feed off everyone else's energy because I don't really know what's going on all the time. It's nice to be able to have a guy next to me cheering and just go, yeah, and kind of cheer with him. You know, that's always a good time.
Mackenzie, your reaction to that blowout?
I mean, it is crazy. And you think about people who are anti-12 team playoff and you look at that first round and some of the blowouts and people are like, what a, waste of time, or maybe we shouldn't have this big playoff. And then you see blowouts happen regardless of the teams, regardless of the talent gap. Like you saw it with the Georgia TCU national championship too. So really interesting just to see the politics and controversy over this 12 team playoff, and interesting to see that blowouts also can happen later in the playoffs.
That's a really good point. For all of, just to summarize what you said so eloquently, for everybody making fun of some of those lower end teams that got blown out, like it's sports. This can happen anywhere and everywhere in every sport. Larry, before we get to your official picks, any reaction from yesterday? I mean, I don't know if you caught, obviously we're always watching sports. You don't do a ton of college football unless you can correct me if I'm wrong. Your reaction to Ohio State yesterday?
Yeah, well, the other game, though, was an absolute thriller. And if Arizona State could have just stopped a 4th and 13, they would be advancing. That was painful to watch on their side from the underdog, but it was also painful to watch that kicker miss, twice down the stretch. But that targeting call, that changed everything. That non-targeting call, they could have won the game in regulation. But my reaction to Ohio State is now I am fully pulling for Ohio State because I know Buckets is going to have scarlet hair if they win it all.
Is that true? Buckets, is that a promise you've made?
That may have been a slightly tipsy tweet I made last night that if Ohio State win the championship, I will dye my hair scarlet in their honor. So that might be happening.
Go Buckeyes. All right, let's get to some official picks. Larry, you're going to kick us off. You've got a college basketball play, but also an NFL play. So you've got the floor, my friend.
Yeah, starting tonight in the Sun Belt, Georgia State is at home. They have a 6-game losing streak. They're welcoming in South Alabama, and this Georgia State team, they're pretty much a mess right now. I got this at 5. I would definitely play this up to 6. South Alabama playing very unselfish, very cohesive basketball. And on the other side, Georgia State, they brought in 11 new players from last season, and it is totally not meshed yet. And the one guy they brought back, he is in a 3 for 34 slump from beyond the arc, and he's usually a reliable three-point shooter, or he was last year, but the new chemistry is completely not there yet, and Coach Jonas Hayes saying he's just still trying to find the right lineup combinations. So the non-conference part of the schedule didn't go well. Now they're getting into conference play against a very good South Alabama team. I'm going to lay it on the road with South Alabama. And then going to Saturday, going to those Baltimore Ravens. I don't want to play the full game, but I do love them in the first half to be up 10 against the Browns. Is it going to be Bailey Zappi? Is it going to be DTR? Either way, I don't think it matters. I mean, this Browns offense is completely pathetic. They've scored in single digits in 3 straight games. The Ravens have been an ATS machine in the first half. They've had some letdowns in the fourth quarter, but if you look at their first halves, they have come out on fire. They have everything to play for, and they also lost a ball to Cleveland earlier this season. And throw in the fact that Lamar still has a shot, an outside shot at the MVP. I think they're going to be up at least 10 at halftime. 17-3 sounds about right going into the half.
I mean, the Browns could not be a bigger mess. After Deshaun Watson got hurt, they were obviously a mess up until that point. Then Jameis comes back and they become exciting again. And then he throws one too many picks and we get basically a Deshaun Watson-led offense again with DTR. I mean, it's absolutely pathetic. I think week 18 is so hard, Larry, because there's so many teams that just not exactly sure what they're rolling out outside of some games that matter for just a handful of teams. But I think this is the look. This first half look for the Ravens is the look. And we've got the Ravens first half and South Alabama. There's a lot of Notre Dame talk in the chat, a lot of Notre Dame, Georgia talk, I should say. We've got something to say. We got a SportsLine pick. Mackenzie, you have a pick on that game, but I want to know what the chat thinks. So if you like Notre Dame, type in Notre Dame or ND. If you like Georgia, type in Georgia or GA. Ken's is wearing the red hat, but I'm not sure she's going that direction necessarily. We'll have to wait and see. The expression on her face tells the entire story. But before we get there, Buckets, we got to get to some soccer. What's the play for the pitch?
Well, sorry, Sia, 1 second. I got to go type GA into the SportsLine chat here real quick to make sure that I'm represented. Let's talk about some soccer plays, though, as well here, because something I pride myself on, Sia, is that I don't need Champions League or EPL or Bundesliga to help us cash tickets. I can go spelunking into these lower leagues, and I can find value regardless of the country, regardless of how hard it is to pronounce these teams. I can still help us cash. With that being said, let's go to the Limassol derby taking place in Cyprus at noon this afternoon between AEL and Apollon Limassol. And I am taking the classic here of both teams to score, yes, at -125. I know it's a little bit of juice, but considering this has hit 4 of the last 5 times these teams have played head-to-head, and considering right now both of these teams have hit over 2.5 5 games straight against each other, I've got no problem betting -125 because, frankly, I don't think the books think people are going to bet this game, and that's when we sneak a little cash ticket in Cyprus. Then, for our second play, I'm taking us to another derby taking place in Scotland, and we've got Dundee FC versus Dundee United. These are two teams that, frankly, not a lot of people are going to really consider betting because usually there's not a lot of value here, unless if you're taking Dundee United draw no bet at -110 here. Dundee United is the better side. It is a derby, and they are on the road here, but this is a team that has only lost 1 of their last 5 games, while Dundee have only won 2 of their last 5 here. These are two very defensive teams. Not really, but defensive in far as Scotland terms are concerned. But I do not see Dundee United losing this. Worst case scenario, I think we get a cagey 1-1 draw. But with that safety net, I will take -110 every single time on this line.
Okay. Can I ask you a question courtesy of Jeff Stenberg? Buckets, how do we not place a wager on Wimbledon team total over 1.5 at even money? This seems like the books have given us a late Christmas gift, he says.
We do not take that because Wimbledon is in a league that you are not allowed to bet on in most sports books here in the state here, which means I have not even looked at this side. I am going to trust you, Jeff, but I can't place this wager even if I wanted to, so I will have to support you morally here through the chat.
Yeah, well, I am, before we transition, you said spelunking. Was that the verb you used?
Yeah, I think that was wrong, if I'm being honest.
I don't think it was.
Buckets.
I heard it at a show yesterday and wanted to use it.
I don't think it was. I think it was like kind of a metaphorical way to use that verb. I was extremely impressed. Well, if you want to place those bets that you're able to place in Ohio, for example, you can go to BetMGM. New BetMGM customers can sign up today and get up to $1,500 in bonus bets. Just place your first wager of at least $10, and you will receive up to $1,500 instantly if your bet loses with bonus code EDGE. That's bonus code EDGE, EDGE. Or a lot more to get to in the chat. We got to get to Mackenzie Brooks picks. We got to get to the SportsLine pick. We got to get to my NFL pick. We're going to do it right after this message from our partners. We're back on the early edge, brought to you by BetMGM. Joe Neuenfeld says, Crocodile Dundee, underrated, a reference that only Larry and I get, and I'm quite sure Mackenzie and Buckets do not get, which I'm not making fun of you for. I mean, we're talking a long, long time ago. Yeah, good stuff, Joe Neuenfeld. Gipper's Pick says, a very sharp Gipper's Picks, who's always in the Discord and really has a lot of good stuff to say from a betting standpoint, which he's probably already said in the chat. He says, Gunner is going to throw 2 picks. His A dot, I think you said air dot, but I think you meant A dot, same thing kind of, is like 5 yards. I mean, small sample size, but yeah, I mean, this is Gunnar Stockton is kind of an unknown commodity, at least as far as starting against good teams. Mackenzie Brooks, that's probably what's leading you to a certain Notre Dame pick. Let's start there.
Yeah, we call this hedging happiness here, Sia, and I've done it a few times on this show. Now, a play I do feel confident about is Notre Dame in the first quarter. This is a phenomenal first quarter team. In their last 5 games, outgaining teams 56-3 in that first quarter. Another thing we have seen is that these teams coming off a bye week are asleep. I mean, you saw Arizona State for the first 45 minutes of that game were basically asleep. You see it for Boise State as well. You saw it certainly for Oregon. So again, I could see a version of this story where Notre Dame comes out with a little more momentum than Georgia. You have an inexperienced quarterback. You have Etienne at running back, and he's not the best pass protector. So you could see some pressure getting to an inexperienced quarterback being a problem early. So I do think first quarter, especially at that price around -105 you can find on some books, is a really, really good price for a Notre Dame team that just continues to deliver in the first quarter. Now, as far as the full game, this is not an official pick. Everybody's on Notre Dame. That is exactly when Kirby Smart will sit you down, hold your hand, and prove you wrong. That's exactly how it goes. That's what happened against Texas twice. That's just the story there. So I don't think Notre Dame full game is my personal favorite pick. I think you attack them in the first quarter. I think Kirby Smart has everyone right where he wants them, and this is where the dogs prevail here.
Oh, that's a very interesting take, because we may be on the other side of that from a SportsLine standpoint. But before I even go there, do you also have an NBA pick to give out?
Yeah, we know why the most important game of my life is going on today. We might as well throw in like a NBA role player prop on this, fine Thursday, obviously. So we're going to go with Naz Reid over 15.5 points and rebounds. He was a machine for us in the playoffs. He's someone I relied on a ton in the playoffs, and we're getting him at a very good buy low spot, and for good reason. 3-7 to this over in his last 10 games. But those 3 overs, he is soaring over. And this specifically is a good matchup against Boston. He averages 19 points of rebounds against this team in his last 3 games against them, 2-1 to that over. And I don't see a version of the story where he doesn't get a ton of minutes. Either he's playing well and he stays in, or maybe it's a blowout and they have backups in, but he typically still continues to play with them. So that's why I like him regardless. And Boston can get you into 3-point shootout competition type of situation. So I think the volume will certainly be there for him. It's just about regressing to the mean and making some shots that he really just is not making recently.
I'm a big Naz Reid guy. I think I've said that on this show before. I think it was this show where I'm like, he's just like so underappreciated, but when he's in the game, I mean, he affects the game in my opinion. Okay, so speaking of blowouts, because you mentioned that in the Minnesota game potential, or in the Boston game, Minnesota. Mark Buchholz, does anyone think that Lane Kiffin may take a page out of Kirby Smart's book and absolutely destroy Duke tonight like Georgia did to FSU last year? Kenz, have you looked at what the model says about this game? Because Duke Ole Miss, Ole Miss is kind of an enigma, but to Mark's point, I'm looking at Ole Miss first half -9.5. I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong, I think Duke is rolling out like their third string. We know their starter is transferred or is in the portal, and I think their second string's not playing either. It does seem like a potential, like a really good spot for Ole Miss to just roll and Lane Kiffin to just kind of celebrate a win heading out of the season. What are your thoughts on this game?
See, you're right, and that would make sense. But then we saw Michigan beat Alabama 16.5-point dogs, and you're like,
Yeah.
what is real, And after Lane Kiffin, he's firing his thoughts on Twitter. Like, how funny and awesome would it be if he loses to Duke? Like, I could see Duke coming out with their hair on fire, being like, you want to talk smack and say you deserve to be in the playoff. Let's see if you can beat, this ACC team that didn't even make the conference championship. So these are really tough games. Like, I respect anyone who really wants to put a solid play, solid unit size on these. I think this is one of those where I just like to isolate players that I know are playing and trying to play for any type of stock. So at this 17.5, I would honestly lean the Duke side there full game.
Yeah.
They're just tough. These are tough.
What's so interesting about what you said and what I left out about my non-compelling argument is that these SEC teams, they kind of don't care, right? Because these are not big games for them. They're certainly big games for Duke. Granted, you're on a third-string quarterback at Duke. It could just go wrong whether the SEC team is motivated or not. But you bring up a really good point. I don't know that a live bet is, KC3 says maybe a good live bet opportunity. That's true. I just don't know how much you can gauge from a motivation standpoint in the first 5 minutes, but maybe that's right. Maybe they do seem motivated and they are going all out, and you can maybe get that line at maybe 16.5 instead of 17.5 in the first couple minutes of the game. Ken's, any reaction to that?
Yeah, well, it just reminds me, as far as live betting, I think for this Georgia Notre Dame game, a over is typically in play here. You just think about these Georgia games, they start slow, they start methodical, and then it's like that end of third quarter, fourth quarter shootout, maybe 8-9 overtimes if you're lucky. Then you get yourself to an over here with these Georgia games.
Larry, go ahead.
Yeah, well, a great place to sweat these college football games is in our Discord. And right before Georgia and Notre Dame kick off at 4 o'clock, 3:30 p.m., Prop Stars will be in there taking every question that you have on NBA props for the full slate tonight. You can ask him anything, and he will be sharing his thoughts 3:30 Eastern in the Discord. Again, if you're a subscriber, you just go to the homepage and you click Join the Community.
Mark Buckholtz, his retort is, but Duke isn't Michigan. That's a really good point. So listen, good, compelling points on both sides here. Speaking of prop stars, Jeff Stenberg says Peyton Pritchard over 3.5 threes at plus 120 is a good wager in his eyes. I know Gipper's picks and Brad Betts they're dropping picks in here. So everybody, Rick Funcannon always dropping picks in here. I'll drop a pick right now. Notre Dame money line. That's not my pick. That's SportsLine's pick. So I guess we're just kind of adding and building upon the Notre Dame first quarter money line bet from Mackenzie Brooks. I know she doesn't love to hear that SportsLine cappers love Notre Dame money line minus 110. But that's where we're headed on SportsLine. And Mackenzie, I do recall, I think you and I were on CBS Sports Network on Monday, and you begrudgingly did say the model kind of likes Notre Dame to come out on top today.
Yeah, I mean, the model makes Notre Dame it's a 1-point game, right? So from a betting aspect, to me, if it's a 52% chance to win the game, regardless who the underdog is, you might as well take that money line at plus money. But as far as who the model has with a greater than 50% chance to win the game, it is Notre Dame. And you can understand why. It comes down to rushing yards. It comes down to turnovers. Like, this is a three-headed rushing monster you're getting with Notre Dame. And a model sees a Georgia rush defense that allowed over 500 yards on the ground to UMass and Georgia Tech. And it's going to think you're going to probably have a really hard time against this Notre Dame offense. So it all makes sense. I mean, unless your name is Texas and you have Longhorns coming out of your helmet, Georgia is not stopping you on the ground from what we've seen. So I'd love to see them prove us wrong, but that's why you see such a problem for Georgia here. And again, just the turnover battle is something Georgia on paper would lose as well.
Buckets, what's so funny?
I just like listen to you guys. It's a lot of, intelligent people in one space talking about something I know nothing about. It's kind of humbling sometimes,
That's definitely not what you were laughing about. With that said, we got a couple of golf questions before I give out my official pick. It's really from Gipper's Picks. He says, do I have any golf DFS lineups? I made a few lineups for today. By the way, if you missed my first round leaders, and I'll try to put this in the Discord next time, but if you missed my first round leaders and my outrights, I had 4 first round leaders, 2 outrights. I tweeted them out last night. Just go to my Twitter. Hopefully most of you are on Twitter. If you're in this space, you probably are. Give me a follow, I guess. But sometimes I'll, especially when a tournament like this where it starts at a really weird time out in Hawaii. I ended up tweeting it out last night. I'll have more content on SportsLine. Once football season ends, more content on SportsLine with official picks and stuff like that. But for now, I put some stuff out on Twitter. And my golf DFS lineup, I mean, I've got Sam Burns, Justin Thomas, and Eric Cole. That would probably be my core 3 in my DFS lineups. All right. Jordan Addison over 64.5 receiving yards. That is a play I like on Sunday night. So this is okay, 2 things here. Only a couple of the major books have this line out. I think just a couple of the books are probably waiting till this afternoon for whatever reason. But we do have a couple of books that have this line out. It's in the 64.5, 65.5 range. It wouldn't shock me if the other books, when they come along, it's 66 or 67.5. That's probably as high as I would go. This is a pretty high line for a wide receiver too. But let's remember, this is a shootout. Let's remember, this is going to be an extremely high total. And Sam Darnold is slated, when you look at his prop, to pass for 280 yards. That is a ton. And a lot of that is going to go to Justin Jefferson, some maybe to Jalen Naylor, some maybe to TJ Hawkinson. But Jordan Addison is, I think, part of the reason Minnesota is so good right now, and part of the reason Sam Darnold's going to get paid next year, is because of the emergence of Jordan Addison. Over his last 6 games, he's gotten 6+ targets. That is a ton for a guy who gets a lot of chunk plays. And against this Detroit defense, who's still without Carlton Davis, who's still banged up at basically every level, but still limiting the run a little bit, I do think Sam Darnold and company, Jordan Addison, Justin Jefferson, are going to get their yards. 64.5 for a guy that's going to get 6 receptions, maybe, even if it's 5, which that's where the books kind of have him at 5. With the chunk plays that he tends to get, I do think he gets to 70 plus. So I do think there's value on this over 64.5 receiving yards. So that is my official play for today. Of course, I still have the golf plays that are pending. The golf tournament hasn't started. I'm, of course, referring to my matchup yesterday, my top Canadian bet from, I guess I probably gave that out on Monday or Tuesday. Buckets, anything in the soccer world in the chat that you need to address?
There is the Italian Super Cup this afternoon between Inter Milan and Atalanta, which is probably the biggest soccer match of the day. But because it's not a game that technically matters as far as placement on the table, I would wait until lineups before I bet that, because we are going to see some of these big names rest. So don't bet anything pregame. I wouldn't be shocked if that's an under. So just be careful and wait till lineups for that one.
All right, Larry, did you notice anything in the chat for you to address? Or do you want to comment on my Jordan Addison over 64.5 receiving yards?
Oh, I mean, I love that. The way that the Niners were just dicing him up, and, it's sort of a Ricky Pearsall follow-up for you.
That's right. If only somebody had said Ricky Pearsall over 19.5 receiving yards and put in their SportsLine write-up, go ahead and ladder this play. Man, if somebody did that, I think a lot of SportsLine members would have absolutely cashed in. Oh, wait. I did do that. And Larry, credit to you because you had that pick as well. That was a really, really fun day for everybody that was on Ricky Pearsall. Mackenzie Brooks, I know you're very good at responding to people in the chat. Maybe it's Georgia hate. I'm not sure. Anything you need to address before we bring up the recap screen?
No, I'm just in here defending the good name of Kirby Smart. I'm taking care of business here.
All right. David Talk says Jordan Addison is really good. Great pick. Joe Neuenfeld says, oh, that Pearsall payout. Thanks again, guys. Yeah, a lot of people had the ladder. I'm sorry I didn't recommend most receiving yards, which sometimes I do, because I'm sure he was probably 11, 12 to 1 on most receiving yards for that game, if not higher. All right. I think that'll about do it. I'm looking at the chat. I want to get to some questions or some picks if I can, but let's go to Brad Betts Footy. Buckets, one more question for you. Do you think Atalanta can score today against Inter?
That's the game I just said wait until lineups, Sia, which makes me think you didn't listen to what I was saying, which kind of bums me out a little bit. But I do think they will score. But again, I'd be a little bit careful until lineups come out for that one.
Yeah, but Buckets, what do you think about Atalanta? Can they score today against?
Oh, that's a great question. I think they can, but it's probably pretty lineup dependent. See.
Yeah, that's fair enough. That's a really smart answer. Thank you. Dano has first round leaders. I get so confused with the soccer names because I'll just be honest. Obviously, you guys and girls know I'm very unfamiliar with the names. So you might ask a question. The names are eluding me, which they'll probably elude me on this recap screen. So let's go right there. Let's take a look at the recap screen. I'm on Jordan Addison over 64.5 receiving yards. That's an exciting game on Sunday night. So we got to wait on that one. Buckets, you're just going to do this one. Go ahead.
We've got AEL Limassol taking on Apollon Limassol in the Cyprus Limassol Derby. Both teams to score yes, followed by the Dundee Derby in Scotland. Dundee FC versus Dundee United. Dundee United draw no bet at -110.
I would have done it just like that. I'll take it from here. Ravens -9.5 in the first half at -122 from the Maestro. And he also is on South Alabama -5. Mackenzie Brooks, Notre Dame first quarter money line -105 and Naz Reid over 15.5 points and rebounds at -106. And the sports line pick, we're tagging along to the first quarter play. We're taking Notre Dame money line -110. Certainly looked like the chat when they were typing in Notre Dame or Georgia was more on Notre Dame than they were on Georgia. But Ken's, like you said, that's exactly where Kirby Smart and his boys want them. Correct?
Correct.
See, I only did that to just showcase that I do pay attention sometimes. Okay, Eric James says, when Sia says climb the ladder, you climb that damn ladder. Wow. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, what a great show. Claire on the ones and twos helping us out, putting your picks in your comments up. She has been controlling the show. So shout out to Claire. Shout out to Larry, Ken's, and Buckets, and Ohio State, and the jacket. Again, the jacket is 1-0. We're rooting for Ohio State to win this whole thing. So we get red hair from Buckets. On behalf of this entire team, on behalf of all of you, let's have a great Thursday. I'm the Counselor of Cash. This is the Early Edge. We rest our case.